People, by which I mean taxpayers, are bound to think, how would the government know if I did something? Some jugaad and get away with it. I will supply goods and not pay tax. Who's to rattle and rant? And how would the government ever know? Well, not so long ago, my answer to such questions would have been with a smirk, and I would just think, yeah, good luck. But now, in the days to come, I have a definitive answer. I can precisely tell you what's going to happen or how the GST authorities are going to find out if you do some GST evasion. This happens through the mechanism of e-invoicing. If you are a GST registered person in India, this is not the first time you have heard the term e-invoicing. If the turnover of your business is running into some several crores, then by now you would have already faced questions like, why not issue an invoice? Or would you issue an e-invoice? Well, this video is going to be all about e-invoicing. Long ago in 2020, yes, pre-pandemic, like in another lifetime, when e-invoicing was just on paper, we did this video linked up here to introduce what is invoicing, how does that work, what it is and what it is not, what you should or should not be doing. But it's been 3 years since then, and a lot has transpired on this front, from government perspective, industry-wise, regulation-wise. So we thought, why not we discuss and deliberate on e-invoicing once again. Not so from the basics point of view, because that's already covered and is up here on this very channel, but from the evolution perspective. I am CA Apurva Jaisama. If you don't know me already, I've been here for quite some time discussing, deliberating and practicing GST. On this channel, we make videos on GST. So before we go ahead, don't forget to like, share and hit the bell icon so that whenever a new video is up, you get a notification. Let's get started. E-invoicing evolution started in the March of 2020. Yes, when the world was homebound due to COVID, CBIC, Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, issued notifications 13 of 2020 and 14 of 2020, dated 21st March. This notification basically prescribed the turnover limits and effective date for e-invoicing. This notification I choose to refer to as the mother notification because it gets amended time and again basically to reduce the turnover threshold applicability. Over the years, this notification has been amended like around 10 times. Even though the notification came in March 2020, the first time e-invoicing ever became applicable to a class of taxpayers was only in October of 2020. It was first made applicable to taxpayers with aggregate turnover exceeding 500 crores from 1st of October 2020. Then slowly and in a phased manner, the turnover threshold began reducing. First to 100 crores in a span of 3 months, that is from Jan 21, and then to 50 crores from April 21. So this here on screen is a summary of the turnover-wise effective dates of the e-invoicing applicability. So as you can see, the turnover threshold limit for e-invoice applicability reduced from 500 crores to just 5 crores in a span of 2.5 years. So this is where I emphasize that the days when a GST registered person issues an invoice and the government knows of it on a real-time basis, thereby making chances of GST evasion nil to negligible, are literally right around the corner. Abhi aane wale hai wo din. So the takeaway at this juncture is that e-invoicing is made applicable to taxpayers with aggregate turnover exceeding 5 crores from August of 2023. So we are just a few months away from these chotu, small businesses are also going to come into the ambit of e-invoicing. So you have to buckle up. Improve your billing efficiencies, streamline your invoicing systems, find a software that suits you, or also you can literally use the software that is made available by the government free of cost. But if you are a business with 5 crores or more aggregate turnover, buckle up from August of 2023. So when I say e-invoicing is applicable to you and you have to start generating it once your turnover exceeds 5 crores, I have to mention and clarify a very important concept here. The e-invoicing limits and applicability that we have just seen on the screen is applicable only to B2B transactions, that is business to business. One GST registered person supplying goods or services to another GST registered person only. So if you are an entrepreneur with turnover exceeding 5 crores, e-invoicing is applicable to only the B2B transactions that you do, not to B2C. that is business to consumer, that is supplies made by a GST registered person to an unregistered customer or consumer, are not covered by the provisions of e-invoicing as yet for this turnover limit. However, the big shot businesses, that is with turnovers exceeding 500 crores, are subjected to e-invoicing at a B2C transaction level also. So here is a quick chart that sets your understanding right for the rest of this discussion. So all those chotu taxpayers and small entrepreneurs watching this, heave a sigh of relief, since e-invoicing is applicable to your business only to the extent of B2B transactions, and that too if your turnover exceeds 5 crores. So unlike the common and most prevalent misunderstanding that e-invoice means generating an invoice on the government portal, no, for the millionth time, no. E-invoicing is not generating your invoice on the government portal. It is rather reporting your invoice level information on the government portal and getting an IRN, invoice reference number, allotted to your invoice by the government. Detailed discussion again available, age-old video on this very channel. You generate your invoice however you do, use Tally, Oracle, Zoho, however you do, but that information to the government and get an IRN affixed on your invoice. E-invoicing and IRN embedded QR code. Once e-invoicing is applicable to your business, that is to the B2B transactions, then you need to get every invoice affixed with an IRN and a QR code that is an IRN embedded QR code. This is nothing but a simple extension of the IRN. Once invoice details are reported to the e-invoice portal, which we refer to as the IRP, it generates an IRN and a QR code. This QR code consists of the entire invoice information embedded into it, like who is the supplier, who is the recipient, what are the underlying goods or services being supplied, what is the value, what is the taxes, all the information that is there in your invoice is basically embedded into this QR code. So this is typically how your IRN embedded e-invoice looks like. It is generated from the IRP. This is typical information that is there on the invoice along with the QR code having all this information embedded into it. The IRN that we are seeing here is a 64-digit IRN. Printing this IRN is not mandatory, but printing of the QR code on the e-invoice is mandatory. Government has specifically given a clarification that QR code should not be printed on a separate paper. It should be visibly, clearly, and in a readable format printed on the face of the invoice only. Positioning of the QR code and what size you want to put it and where you want to put it is at your discretion. Self-generated dynamic QR code is applicable for B2C transactions for businesses with aggregate turnover exceeding 500 crores. This QR code on B2C invoices shall be generated by the businesses and shall have payment cross-reference to it. The purpose of this is to enable and encourage digital payments where buyers can scan the dynamic QR code and make payment from mobile wallets directly. See, normally there are two types of QR codes that are available in the industry. One is a static QR code and the other is a dynamic QR code. Static QR code is what we generally see in small shops where there is a QR code that is printed or stuck and you just scan the QR code, you enter the amount manually and then you make the payment. Dynamic QR code is what we see when we go to big supermarkets where a unique QR code is generated on the POS machine. So once you scan it, the amount also comes automatically. It is fetched. All that you have to do is just scan and pay. For B2C transactions for turnovers exceeding 500 crores, it is this dynamic QR code that has to be embedded for every transaction. As a taxpayer, there are typically 4 types of documents which are issued on a daily basis for most of the transactions that a business does. Number 1 is the tax invoice for supply of taxable goods or services. Then businesses issue credit notes and debit notes, which are issued for any kind of additions or deletions to be made on the face of these tax invoices. And then you have bill of supplies, which are issued for making exempt sales, that is supplies on which GST is exempted. GST is not charged. Now, out of these 3 types of documents, e-invoice has to be issued for 2 of them, that is for all tax invoices and all the corresponding debit notes and credit notes. Bill of supply does not require an e-invoice since there is no tax that is being charged on the document. So even your business exceeds turnover of 5 crores, even if you have B2B supplies, but let us say most of those supplies are exempt transactions, then you do not have to generate an IRN for your exempt turnover. A very common misunderstanding that exists in this matter is in the case of exporters. Since exports are zero rated, that is essentially again no GST, but many a times exporters believe that e-invoice is not applicable to them. However, this belief is misplaced and entirely incorrect. See, even if you are an exporter, even though your supplies are zero rated, even though you do not end up paying any tax, however, there is a need to issue an invoice, and this is specifically given in explicit terms in the Mother Notification 13 of 2020. So even if the export is to a foreign customer or a foreign consumer or a foreign business, or even if the underlying goods that you are exporting are exempted from GST, there is a need to generate an e-invoice for all of your export transactions in case your turnover exceeds 5 crores. So Indian economy is complex and Indian tax laws are complicated. So what makes e-invoicing complicated is that there is a category of taxpayers who are not required to generate any invoice. What am I essentially saying is that there is a set of businesses, a set of taxpayers for whom e-invoicing is exempted. So even if your turnover exceeds several hundreds of crores, e-invoicing is not applicable to them. No. So who are these kind of privileged people? Number one, you have goods transport agencies. Number two, you have passenger transport service providers. You have banks, they don't issue an invoice. You have insurance companies, they don't issue an invoice. Cinema theaters and multiplex are not required to issue an invoice. SEZ units are exempted from invoice, and so are government departments and local authorities. However, since they are exempted from the e-invoicing norms, there is a small declaration that these businesses have to state on their normal invoices, reinforcing the fact of this exemption. This declaration has to be printed on each and every invoice that they issue. And I quote, "We hereby declare that though our aggregate turnover in any preceding financial year from 17-18 is more than the aggregate turnover notified under Subrule 4 of Rule 48, we are not required to prepare an e-invoice in terms of the provisions of the rule." There is no last date to issue an e-invoice. See, one has to understand the essence of this mechanism that you generate an invoice and you are expected to immediately generate an e-invoice also. So in an ideal situation, there is not going to be a last date. There is actually not expected that there is any gap in the time frame between you generating an invoice and generating an e-invoice. But of course, businesses is not as simple as framing the law and hoping that everybody adheres to it. There are going to be business scenarios, there are going to be situations in every business for that matter where IRN generation immediately is not possible. One must strive to implement the law in its truest sense and make sure all regulations are complied with. However, in cases for any reason absolutely whatsoever, you are unable to generate an e-invoice immediately. Let's say a day or two has passed. The e-invoice portal still allows you to generate an IRN for a backdated invoice. This is possible at the moment. Same thing for IRN generation of credit notes and debit notes also. So if IRN generation is missed for any invoice, it can be regularized by generating an IRN at the later date. This is no alternative method of compliance. You have to generate an IRN immediately for all cases. That is what is expected out of you. However, better late than never option also exists in, most minimal and rarest of the situations. On 13th April 23, the GST portal published an advisory that now the government is going to implement a time limit to generate e-invoices, which is going to be 7 days from the date of the actual invoice. So that meant the delay in time frame from the date of your actual invoice to the date of your IRN generation could not exceed 7 days for taxpayers whose turnover exceeds 100 crores. This was supposed to go live from 1st of May. However, on 6th May 2023, again the GST portal published an advisory deferring this step. So we are as yet functioning in a system where e-invoice generation does not have a last date, but the aim is to have it made real time or near real time. Yes, it is possible to cancel an e-invoice, and e-invoice portal allows cancellation up to 24 hours from the date of IRN generation. But what happens if 24 hours has passed since IRN generation and now your invoice needs to be cancelled? Well, here the IRN portal cannot do anything. You cannot cancel an IRN or an e-invoice per se after 24 hours. But all that you can do is that when this invoice auto-populates into your GSTR1 at the time of filing the return, this invoice can be removed from the reportable. That's the maximum recourse available. It is advisable to always have a track of such instances where invoices were generated and then manually removed from GSTR1, so that any given day as a business you are aware of the e-invoices that have been cancelled and why there is a difference in the revenue numbers as per the e-invoice portal and the GST returns. So all this noise and notifications around e-invoicing, okay, I get it, but what's going to happen if I don't comply with it? Let us say I'm a taxpayer who is required to generate an e-invoice, but I am not doing that. Then what's going to befall on me? Well, the consequences are quite severe and far-fetched. The catch lies in Rule 48 of the CGST rules, which you can see now on the screen. This means that if a taxpayer who is required to issue an e-invoice, generate an IRN, is not doing so, then it is as good as non-generation of a valid tax invoice. It is an offense under GST to execute a supply without an underlying tax invoice, and penalties get triggered under the offense of issuing an incorrect tax invoice, or for that matter, non-issuance of an invoice at all. So the penalty is going to be 100% of the tax involved, or rupees 10,000, whichever is higher. It's been a really long time that I myself have done such a long and informative video. Everyone's busy, so busy is not an excuse here. I would just say life happened. That's all I have to say. I'm striving to be regular and consistent here, and you will get to see more of me on this channel frequently from now on. Anyway, that's it for this video on e-invoicing. I believe I have covered end-to-end, and also believe that this information would substantially add to your knowledge. Please remember to like this video, share this video, and also subscribe to G for GST and show us some love and support. Help us help you in GST. Signing off. See you, Apurva Jaisimha.